Hi everyone, and once again, welcome to Sandro's Success Series on live stream. Great to have you with us wherever you are in the world. Today we have a very, very interesting guest, a lovely bloke as well, if I may say, from the conversation I've had with him offline. I am not going to do him the injustice of trying to make up some words. I'm going to read very briefly part of his very, very well, it's an extraordinary CV actually, and a career that spans a couple of decades. He's done some amazing things, but I'm not going to steal his thunder by asking anything of him other than to see. This is where it all goes right. We'll start that again.
That's okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to Sandro's Success Series on live stream. Really good to have you with us wherever you are in the world. Today, we have a really fascinating individual joining us, a really nice chap as well, if I may say. Had a conversation with him prior to this offline, and he has got one heck of a CV, and I really want to share it with you. I'm not going to do him the injustice of allowing anything other than to hear this from the horse's mouth, as it were, but I will just briefly line this up by sharing with you that our guest today, Glenn Shoosmith, is one of the original Silicone Roundabout tech entrepreneurs, so way out of my league already, that formed startups close to the old street in London in the new millennium. He was founder of the BookingBug JRNI platform, which was used by retailers such as John Lewis and was later sold to a US investor for $50 million. Glenn was also a tech advisor to Number 10 under the Cameron government. His latest venture, which is what we're going to talk about a little bit today, is a tech platform called Prove Anything, which provides digital passports for consumer products. And in particular, he's at the forefront of a retail revolution that's about to see barcodes replaced by a new generation of smart QR codes. Let's talk about that. As I say, way above my pay grade, but I am really looking forward to understanding a little bit about why someone like Glenn would challenge the status quo, something we've all been used to seeing for years and years and years, but we're about to find out why this individual has been so successful in pretty much everything he's done. Glenn, welcome to Sandro's Success Series. Really good to have you with us. Heard lots about you. We've spoken a little bit offline. I'm really, really looking forward to this conversation today.
Thank you very much for that. A very fantastic intro. I have to say, I don't know this guy. He sounds fantastic. I want to meet him too. But no, thank you. It's really great to be here, and hopefully we can have a good chat and give some interesting content, some interesting insights to your listeners.
When you were introduced to me, Glenn, you were described as articulate and a great speaker, also very friendly. I think you've ticked those three boxes already. Let's start with the obvious. You know, I have to ask you this because I think it is the obvious place to start here. Your background, and in particular, some very interesting things that you've done, because I think the first thing that we hear people say that would listen to something like this, they go, you know, it's just a smart guy that's come up with an idea. But it's the case, isn't it, that you have done lots of different things. So let's start kind of at the beginning and bring us to where we are today, and then we'll talk specifically about what you're currently doing.
No, absolutely, and it's funny. So I'm a techie, right? And some people who know me well go, well, of course you're a techie. You just talking ones and zeros. But then other people, especially when I am presenting or on other things like that, they go, so, you know, this is a great platform. Who, you know, what's your tech team? Who built this? And I'm like, I built it. And they're like, sorry, but you can't be the coder. You speak far too clearly to actually be able to code things yourself, surely. But no, I mean, I have a degree in computer science, and my first love and passion is writing code, very much so. So, but it's all about the application of how you can solve problems with that code, solve real world problems. And I think that's what led me down my career of actually going, hang on, you know, I don't just want to be the guy in the back room. You know, I know we have the guy in the back room in this call, and you always need the guy in the back room, and it has an absolutely critical role. But I think I've always gone, but I like standing up in front of an audience. I like doing a song and a dance, and that's quite unusual for a coder. And at that point, I realized I'm like, oh, I have a weird skill set here. I can code, and I like being in front of people. I should capitalize on that. And I've had a fun few years working through that.
Yeah, if you don't mind me saying, and look, this is the stereotype, right? You don't strike me as a tall nerdy. If that's a fair word to use. You know, you are friendly and you are articulate, and you are certainly not somebody that you shove in a dark room and say, you know, there's a keyboard, get going. So how did you capitalize on this? Let's talk about perhaps let's come to the present day, and then we'll kind of retrace our steps, because I'd like to find out a little bit more about, what happened in the millennium. And in particular, what I'm really interested to find out, because there is a call from those that listen to this series, Glenn, and that is, why on earth would you change or challenge something that's been around for years? Because most people look for opportunities to solve a problem, something new, something innovative. But what you've really done is kind of gone up against, something that we've all accepted as being, part of the retail furniture for a long time. Why on earth? Why on earth
now?
Well, yeah, why do something that, the path of least resistance for most people, but the opposite in this particular case?
Well, so actually the key of any revolution of technology and product is timing, right? And one of the biggest problem entrepreneurs often face is not inability to innovate, but inability to innovate at the right time. The interesting thing is people discuss like QR codes, and they're not new. They've been around for years and years and years, and people think a lot of them they became very prevalent during the pandemic. And it's very hard to say, oh, the pandemic did a great thing, because it's like many things. So many good things, so many innovations come out of so many dark circumstances. But what the pandemic did was it created understanding. I mean, obviously, a lot of people scanning restaurant menus hate QR codes, and I'm completely with them on that. Much prefer a paper menu. But what it did get people to understand is to look at the QR code and go, oh, I can hold my phone over this and it will give me information. And that's wonderful, because it's multi-language. That works anywhere, in any language. And that's actually really unusual. Even a web URL isn't quite like, there is very little in the world of communication where something creates an immediate understanding of an action and an output you have to do. And the QR code does that very, very well. So in the idea, it says, scan this to do something, became a really interesting way of bringing things to life. And the other thing is that, so the barcode is a classic one. Now, the barcode, famously, again, was invented years and years and years earlier than it was mass adopted. And it was really only mass adopted when companies like Walmart went, hang on, we want to do digital inventory, we want to do digital tracking, we want to do end-to-end supply chain processes. And if you want to sell your product in Walmart, you have to put a barcode on it. You have to do it in a standardized way. Otherwise, we won't sell your product. And at that point, everybody put barcodes on these things. That will happen with QR codes. In the next 3 to 5 years, and I mean, the organization called GS1, who I'll talk about, want to really do this by the end of 2027. They want organizations, they want big food retailers and clothing retailers to say, every single product you make should have a QR code on it, either as well as or instead of a barcode. So the great thing is, I don't have to push that innovation. I've got a massive non-profit organization in the form of GS1 pushing that innovation. And I'm just riding its coattails going, I've got the solution to make this work for you. So it's a fantastic time and opportunity. And as an entrepreneur, you go, okay, what's the current market penetration of what I'm doing? Less than 1%. By 2028, what will the market penetration be of QR codes on products? Pretty much 100%. So I've got a 3 to 4 year window to sell a solution to every single manufacturer and retailer on the planet. And that's a pretty cool market. So as an entrepreneur, you go, there's a market opportunity there.
Just listening to what you say, and I totally get that, and kudos to you, because a lot of people, either they fall into one or two categories in my experience, Glenn. Either they've got a great idea and never do anything about it, or they've got a great idea, start off on the road to launching a product, building a product, selling a product. I mean, the obvious thing that I would make by way of an observation is you go to a supermarket, for example, barcode city, and the first thing they're going to say is, well, if we change the way we've always done it, then it means that the intended or unintended consequence of changing something is we've then got this cost and that potential problem. So how do you meet with the obvious resistance that comes? Because there's obviously a knock-on effect, isn't there? When you come up with something, the idea itself might be fantastic, everyone buys into it, and then some boffin goes, well, hang on a minute, we've got this problem and that obstacle to overcome, and therefore it's not going to work.
Oh yeah.
Have
I
there
mean,
been, is there pushback? Do you know, how
oh,
do you deal with that?
100%. And I mean, look, the entrepreneur's mantra is always that ideas are cheap and execution is everything, right? People, I've got this great idea. I'm like, doesn't really matter. It's how you execute on that idea that is all and everything that matters. And yes, absolutely. And that's the really interesting thing, is that we've had some people go, this is fantastic, I want this. It's really interesting talking to companies about why they'd want to do this. And that's the key thing, is the why, right? It's not just a QR code. It's about communication. So let me take a step back for a second and actually say what we do. So the company is called Prove Anything. And what Prove Anything does is we create what is known as a digital twin. And digital twins used to be very much like an engineering term, like we have a digital twin of this aircraft engine and we're using that to model the forces and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like how the engine will perform. Possibly if it's Boeing, how quickly the engine parts will fall off, I don't know. And the other one is used in like oil and big industry to measure flows of machines. It's generally a very industrial term. And then, you know, a lot of Web3 stuff came along and people started to use about digital twins to mean things like you can have these sneakers in the metaverse, which sort of is the other end of the scale of like, well, the metaverse doesn't support shoes yet. So how are you going to wear the sneakers? What we said, we wanted to create digital twins for much more everyday items. Like your fridge should have a digital twin, and the digital twin of your fridge should have your manual, your warranties, access to spare parts, instructions, guides, all the useful things you might want to know. A digital wallet of everything you wanted to know about that product. And then we really discovered that one of the critical things people needed a digital record of was things like food and drinks. And that digital record of food needed to have things like the allergy information and the batch information. And if there was a recall about that batch, because right now the process is, if they have a recall about something, which now I see like every day, they go, please look at the thing, find the expiry date and the batch number printed in a tiny writing. And then if it says batch number 8957-B and it was made on this date, then it might contain nuts and you should throw it away. And it's like, oh, for goodness sake. If there was a QR code that said, if you own this product, scan the QR code, and it will immediately tell you, you know, this has this allergy, this has this problem, there is this recall, this communication could be there. And what was really interesting was literally Sky News this morning had an interview with an allergy organization and GS1, literally talking about the importance of communication, mislabeling, because the law, and this is where you bring the law into it. The law says you have to label products with allergy information, but I can't find a single case of someone that goes, I can't read those labels. The law says I have to print it, but no one says I have to print it in legible or readable formats. So you end up going, actually, here's why you want to do this. You go, you know, we speak to supermarkets. It's like, do you care about your customers' allergy? Do you care about your customers' accessibility requirements? Do you care about, and I scanned a food product and I was allergic to something and I couldn't read German. How the blink am I supposed to know if it has the thing I'm allergic to? It's an absolute nightmare. Whereas obviously you go, well, a QR code, you could scan that. It could tell you that information. It could translate it for you. It could read it out loud with a screen reader. These are all. And right now we're talking to retailers who are ahead, thinking ahead, going, oh yeah, we should do that. This makes us look good. This is good for our credentials. This is good for our customer base. But I think eventually the law's going to catch up. I think the laggards will find themselves being forced to adopt this because the law's going to go, yeah, this packaging's unreadable and it's not multi-language and it's not accessible and it's not clear and it's sometimes wrong. This is where the QR code can step in and help.
I have to bow here to your greater knowledge, expertise, application, education, articulation. That's why I've got a completely different job to you. One thing that we hear a lot, Glenn, from listeners around the world is and there's two parts to this question. I think number one is, you know, it sounds to me, although you've been extraordinarily successful, you're clearly very bright, you see opportunity in the marketplace, the application as you've described, which is really what's propelled you to where you are today. And you've been there before. It's not like this is, you know, I'm talking today to somebody who's just come up with a great idea. You know, you've been successful before. Number one, why on earth would you want to do it all again? Where does that drive come from? And then I think the second thing is when you do meet with resistance and when there are challenges and problems, as there are for any entrepreneur, how do you deal with those slumps, the setbacks, the pushbacks? Because that's a very common question we get from people. And I think a lot of successful people do actually find that one quite hard to answer, because for most, I don't know whether they don't see the problems that they have or whether they just get, a little bit lucky. I'm not sure, but I'd be very interested to hear from you on both those, really.
No, absolutely. I mean, yes. So I built a company before, as you said. I built it from me starting it in my bedroom. We raised over 25 million in VC. I grew it to having 130 staff. And there was a lot of success stories in there, but I'll be honest, it didn't end as well as I wanted. And I regretted that. I think there's a bit of where that you go, okay, I've done it once, I've built a company, but it sort of like, and it was successful, but it wasn't as successful as I wanted it to be, or as I felt it could be. And I look at the mistakes I made, the things I did right and the things I did wrong, where there are plenty of both. And I always think you learn more lessons from the things you do wrong. I think entrepreneurs that only tell you all the golden things and the lucky things and the amazing things that went right, there's no lessons there because they're so hard to replicate. The things you screw up are the things that other people can avoid and are actually a way more valuable lesson. So anytime I'm ever giving like entrepreneurship talks, I always love to be sort of, fairly honest, fairly open, fairly Chatham House rules, but fairly like, I did this wrong and I did this wrong and I did that wrong, because don't do that. And that's, so then you like, well, I can do this again. I can do it better. I can do it faster. I can make less mistakes. I can hone on what I got right. And then there's an element of like challenging yourself, going, that there's that line that's once you're lucky, twice you're good. When I got things right, was I lucky or was I good? And you want to prove that to yourself. But you're right, the ups and downs are hard. The seesawing, the mental fortitude it takes to be an entrepreneur is tough. And you see these podcasts and talks by sort of VCs and successful entrepreneurs that are often like, anyone could be an entrepreneur, everyone should be an entrepreneur, etc. And I don't agree with that. It's a tough life. It's a lonely life sometimes, and and the ups and downs of it aren't for everybody. And I think if I didn't have it's like an itch to scratch, a desire to prove myself. You have to be slightly broken in a way, I think, to be an entrepreneur. You have to have a desperate need to prove something or do something. In fact, if I was just happier having a normal 9-to-5 job, my life would be a lot simpler. And I would certainly never denigrate anyone that was happy in a normal job, because God, it's hard. And those ups and downs are hard.
I have to say, number one, I asked that question deliberately because you have a very honest face, Glenn. So I thought you'd give me a very transparent answer, which you clearly did. The something to prove point is an interesting one, because when my father passed away when I was very young, I was just about to turn 9, and my mum came to school and told me that as the eldest of 4 very young children at the time, I was now the man of the house. And I think she meant that in a very positive way. But it was interesting because what she did inadvertently was bestowed upon me, rightly or wrongly, this desire to prove myself, to be the man of the house. And that's really the reason I started my own business. So I think we've all got a bit of a story. So, what's the next obvious part of your journey, Glenn, in terms of where this is all going? It sounds like, as you say, 3 to 4 year window of opportunity. Without giving your trade secrets away, what's the next part of the journey? Are we gonna read a book? Then Shoosmith and
no one. I'm terrible. People always read business books, and I probably really should. And I'm sure there's many great business books, but no one. No, I'd never want to write that. No one would want to see that. But the interesting thing for us, like the classic thing any entrepreneur needs to find, is the dreaded phrase product market fit. Right. And that's the interesting thing that we've been going through. Is like, we started as a platform, as I said, for digital twins. And we started with a lot more of a blockchain bent. Right. We started just as the whole like NFT wave was kicking off. And we were like, wow, we should use blockchain to create digital records for physical things. And I'm a technologist that likes to actually remove the technology from the conversation with the customer. right? I always have this saying about blockchain solutions for things, that if you need to name your blockchain in your customer solution, then you're kind of doing it wrong. Like, no one ever says, you know, oh, I've built an amazing new game written on MySQL. Like, no one cares about the database. And I kind of think blockchains should be, if they can't just talk about the value and the solution they give without talking about, you know, the actual underlying technology, they're getting something wrong. So that's where we started from. And then obviously all the NFT blockchain world kind of went south a bit, and we were like, okay, let's actually just focus on it being blockchain optional and focus on other markets. And that's where we really evolved where we are. Like, no one needs to see a blockchain record of a lasagna. But I'm sure someone's making one somewhere. NFT lasagnas, I'm sure it's a thing. But the reality is that our product's very broad. We've built this tool set that's amazingly powerful. And then now we try to go, what do we do with it? And I have this analogy, and my team laugh at it every time I use it, but now I hear them using it as well, which is our platform's a bit of a mullet. So even you're laughing at that, but people get it. It's business at the front and it's party at the back. So the business at the front is all of this legislation that's coming, all of these EU digital product passports, these new legislations about wine and electronics and materials and textiles, and say all the GS1, all of this stuff is people like, oh, I have to do this. I have to show transparency of my clothing. I have to show origin and recycling and materials. And oh, it's cumbersome, but I legally have to do it. So there's a product there you can sell to people because it solves a need, but it's the business at the front that they have to do, which means as a business, they're putting it off as much as possible and they're delaying it as much as possible and they're paying as little as they can to do it. But then the other bit is you say, well, you do it for engagement, you do it for interaction, you do it for data. And some of the stuff we do is we put QR codes on stuff. And some of the stuff we can do is put an NFC tag. So an NFC tag, for those that don't know, is basically a little computer chip. It's a little passive chip, and it's exactly the kind of thing that's used in your like tap and pay and things like that. And we can do secure NFC tags that you can put in things like clothing. And it's the same thing. It's this digital twin, and you tap it and it brings the clothing to life. And then suddenly it's like, well, have I got an authentic thing? How can I create engagement around that? So suddenly we're talking to people about bringing to life their products through a digital world. And they're like, wow, that's cool. I want to do that. That could create new sponsorship opportunities, new marketing opportunities. You could take that out to all kinds of industries and music and sport. And that's far sexier and far cooler. So now I have to work out is, am I chasing the sexy, cool stuff, which sounds more fun, or am I chasing the business at the front regulation stuff? And I think as the entrepreneur, when you've got a platform, you've got to try and work out where the market is, where the opportunity is, and where the traction is. And that's probably our toughest challenge at the moment.
I guess also, you know, you're talking today to a classic Gen Xer, you know, where one door's being opened to a totally new market, new demographic, for example. And as we know, the millennials, the Gen Zs are fully embracing all of this. And what you're talking today is entirely English. To Gen Xers and baby boomers, it sounds like, you know, a form of Mandarin. Whereas you have those obvious opportunities, how do you deal with, and maybe there is no answer to this, I don't know. Do you just leave the likes of the Gen Xers and the baby boomers behind, who find all this, you know, way beyond their capabilities? Is that just a natural, is that natural byproduct of this opportunity, as in the loss of other consumers as part of this process? How do people like me deal with this change? Because I look at this and just go, flipping heck, you know. Glenn, he's very, very smart, but I'm not sure I fully get all this stuff. And is this something that I even need to worry about? So what I'm really saying is market opportunity, where one door opens, does another one close, or is it not like that?
No, market education is a really interesting question, right? I mean, I am a Gen Xer myself, although I'm always accused of looking younger than my age.
You're not a Gen X. I don't believe that for a second.
76. I was born in 76.
Wow.
The looking younger than your age is sometimes a blessing and sometimes a curse. I get amusingly patronized by people like, oh, you young people starting your first company, are you? I'm like, I'm 47, you know.
What we should have done, if I'd only have known, if I'd asked you this question first, we could have a whole live stream conversation on how to to look young, maybe throwing back the years, because I'm nearly 56, and a
Oh,
lot of people
very
say
good for 56.
I look younger than I am. So maybe we'll have another one of these and talk about beauty products and or the filters on our Zoom.
Our Zoom filters, yes. No, yeah. Well, that's always an interesting one as well. But the yes, like longevity startups, that's an interesting topic. But no, look, well, this is back to so obviously on the QR code side, back to the pandemic really got people into that, right? It's suddenly people are, oh, you know, I have a smartphone. Apparently, if I open the camera, it does a thing, right? And there's a whole generation that got that. And the interesting thing with the sort of food stuff, there are specialist companies that we're working with that really work on kind of accessibility for the partially sighted to make it easier for you to find the packet, right? So they actually overlay the QR code with extra tags that then an app can help find that product. So if you're looking for something, it can highlight it, can read it out, it can tell it more clearly. So the irony is actually, you know, the boomers and all the rest of it, actually, you know, they are starting to adopt the technology because actually it's meeting accessibility needs they have. So there is that as well. But yes, on the NFC tap thing, I did go to an event where there is a clear divider of those that understood how to use it and those that didn't. One of my biggest dividers, so the way I sometimes describe our product, right, is the sort of our SmartLinks platform, this idea of scan a QR code and it points you to everything about the product, is I say it's like Linktree for products. It's a you know, it's like a Linktree, but it's for products. So each one is about the product and lots of links about the product. And no one under 40 knows what a Linktree is. Sorry, no one over 40. No one over 40 knows what a Linktree is. Everyone under 40 is like, oh yeah, no, of course I know Linktree, right? Because everyone has it on their socials. Everyone has it on their TikTok or their Instagram or blah, 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 that says they don't just have a link to their website. They don't have a link to, they wouldn't be caught using Facebook. They have a link to their Linktree, and that links to all the rest of their social streams and all the rest of their YouTubes and everything else, right? But no one over Linktree never heard of it. I mean, it's the multi-billion-dollar company that no one over 40 has ever heard of. So you're right. When you communicate an idea, you have to put it in the language that somebody understands. But you know, a lot of generations now understand scan a QR code from menu, tap and pay. You know, you just don't have to use the lingo. You just have to phrase it in their mindset.
Can I ask you one final question? Since you are a techie who's an honest techie with a personality, you know, I think I can coax an honest answer from you. This extraordinary advance in technology, AI, we just seem to be witnessing an acceleration in the development of technology and all the advantages and to some extent challenges it brings. Where do you sit, Glenn, on the blessing or curse, to use the two words that you used a little earlier, in terms of innovation and the speed of change? Because, you know, there are undoubtedly lots of amazing things that technology and all the things you're doing bring to us as consumers, but there are also some fairly terrifying things if you know, technology and the advances in technology are unharnessed. So where do you sit in this ongoing debate in terms of how fast the world is moving?
So that's a great question. And I must admit, when I decided to start another business, I ummed and ahed, you know, and this is a couple of years ago now, whether to go into the blockchain space or the AI space. And I didn't feel bright enough to really get into AI, because at the time you didn't have ChatGPT, these kind of tools hadn't launched, and you really had to know what you were doing. And I was like, oh, this blockchain stuff looks way easier. I can program smart contracts. So I did that. And then, of course, all the blockchain stuff collapsed and all the AI stuff took off. So I clearly am an idiot that made totally the wrong call there. But what's been interesting is obviously the amount of the advances have been fantastic, right? But they've also been terrible in the sense that they're not yet mature. I mean, any technology innovation involves a massively turbulent time, right? And I think that's what there's no press stories of interest going, it's going to be turbulent for the next 10 years till we sort it out, right? They want to know the answer today. It's much like the stories about the metaverse, where people, you know, Mark Zuckerberg was like, the metaverse is going to take 10 years. And then 6 months later, people going, oh, it's a failure. It's like, well, no, it's going to take 10 years. you can't declare it as a failure after 6 months because it's not as good as he painted a picture for how it's going to be in 10 years, and you 6 months later you're going, it's not there yet. It's obviously rubbish. And the same is true of AI. People like painting this picture of how it's going to be in 10 years and then complaining that it's rubbish today. And obviously with that tumultuous change, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of bad, there's a lot of damage. There's, it's not great what's happening to artists and creatives. A whole bunch of people will lose their jobs and a whole bunch of new jobs will be created. And during that tumultuous times, some people will make a lot of money, some people will lose a lot of money, some people will be very unhappy, some people will be very excited. And it's fascinating and it's exciting, and it's you can be like, it's a great time to be alive, but obviously it'll be better the other side of it when we're out of these tumultuous times, because I can understand people's concerns, people reticent. I'm not comfortable with the amount of energy they use, the amount of environmental impact that all of these massive amounts of, first it was massive amounts of GPUs for Bitcoin mining, which I was not happy with, and now it's massive amounts of GPUs to process, knocked up images that you want to create on Midjourney or something like that. But again, you look at the amount of money they're investing and they're going, how can we make this scale? How can we make this more affordable? How can we make this achievable? So I'm excited for the future, but I think we're in for a rough couple of years between now and then.
I knew we'd get an honest answer from you. I would love to go on having this conversation, but regrettably, we have no time left. Glenn Shoosmith, thank you so much for joining us on Sandro's Success Series. I have to say that you are definitely the friendliest, definitely the most articulate, and certainly the most honest tech success I've ever had the privilege of speaking to. So long may you continue to be successful. Long may you continue to look as young as you do. I still don't believe you're 47. That's clearly a lie. But in all you continue to do, a very best wishes to you. How do people find out more about you? Have you got a website? I don't think handing out your email is a good idea, because you might get.
I'm Glenn Shoosmith. I'm fairly findable on LinkedIn for those that want to reach me. They can go and look at proveanything.com to understand a bit more about our platform and its various uses and use cases. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to put a plug in there.
I will be straight on that. Then I'll do a bit more stalking when I get the opportunity when we come off the live stream today. Glenn Shoosmith, let's hope we can reconnect offline another time over a beer sometime. I need to pick your brains because, as I said, you're clearly smarter than me. But thank you so much for enlightening us today. Really fascinating what's going on in the world. And I really am grateful on behalf of all those listening from all around the world that you've kind of helped a lot of people make a great deal of sense of something that up until now has been a difficult subject for them to fully understand. But also, I think in particular, some of the insights into really what makes successful people successful. And as you say, learning from the mistakes as much as the successes is clearly been, part of your path to success in life and business. So thank you so much for joining us.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.